Too?
So far, Doc should be on shortly, and we had we had three official registrants, but like any of these things, we had like a dozen elsewhere. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's true. So far, they've been really good.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Welcome to A Fantastic Life, and that is the title of Dr. Barry Lycka's brand new book coming out right away. And for Cyndicate members, tribe members, and for those that are going to be sharing this in the future, the goal of A Fantastic Life is, of course, to lead a fantastic life. Sometimes that means extraordinary. Sometimes that means mundane. That can mean your children, your grandchildren, your parents and grandparents having a better quality of a relationship. Oh, here we go. Next one's coming in. Laurette will be with us shortly.
Wow.
It means, Laurette's good to see you. Welcome to the party. We have a few more coming in a little late, and we've just started. So A Fantastic Life is about literally living those moments, first of all, to our maximum, when the hill or the peak is incredibly high, and when the lows come, to be able to mitigate and maximize how it is that we're going to live, so that on a daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly basis, the quality of our life continues to improve. Doc Lycka has led an incredibly interesting life. He's had a wonderful turn of events, a stellar medical career, and has turned his mind and his ability to work with people on helping people to maximize their life. Call it his second career. He retired from medicine to work on people internally now with the way they view the world, with their mindset, and more importantly, how they're going to get the most out of themselves next in life. So Doc, welcome. And to our audience, thank you. And for those that are going to see this in the future, please do not hesitate to reach out to Doc Lycka. He's very easy to find on social media. It's not going to be a challenge at all to get him there. Doc, for our audience, tell me a little bit about you. And you've got 6 months to live. How are you going to get your affairs in order?
Well, that's a pretty good story. You know, I was walking with my wife in Disneyland in 2003, and my wife turned to me and said, "What's wrong with you, hon?" And I said, "What do you mean, what's wrong with me?" She said, "You know, your foot is flapping." I said, "What do you mean my foot is flapping? You're not even speaking the same language." She said, "Listen to your foot." So I was walking along, and with each step I was taking, my foot was slapping on the pavement. I had suddenly and mysteriously developed a right foot drop. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was hot. It was probably 31 degrees centigrade. It was humid. So I said, "It's hot and humid. That probably explains it." She said, "No, it doesn't." She said, "Did you have a stroke?" And I said, "No, that's not how a stroke presents. You know, if I had a stroke, I'd probably be lying on the ground right now." She said, "Well, whatever it is, when we get back home, you better get it checked out. And when your wife says you better get it checked out, you better get it checked out. Otherwise, you know what's coming." So I got back home and I had every test known to man. I had CAT scans, I had brain scans, I had scans. And you know what they showed at the end of that? Absolutely nothing. The doctors were perplexed just like I was. They thought I might have a brain tumor. Thank goodness I didn't have that. They thought I might have a slipped disc. Thank goodness I didn't have that. So I finally went to see one of the world-class neurologists, a guy with a big reputation and so on. I walked into his office and he said, "Dr. Lycka, you better be sitting down when I tell you this." I said, "What's wrong? I've got a dropped right foot." He said, "No, you've got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and in 6 months you're going to be dead. Get your affairs in order."
Wow.
So I turned to him rather aghast and I said, "Is there a way to prove this?" He said, "Of course, an autopsy." Well, I told him, I'm not going to autopsy to prove you wrong." So I left. I was angry. I was depressed. I went through the phases of Kubler-Ross where you go through anger, denial, bargaining, depression, and her final phase is acceptance. Well, I wouldn't accept this condition. I went to my wife and I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "I haven't got the faintest idea, but whatever you have, it's not ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease." So 2003, there was this little thing invented called the internet. People didn't even know if it would pan out at that time. I think Mr. Gore said he invented it at one time, and I started looking and dabbling into it. Now, back then it was primitive. You actually had to learn a language called DOS to get on it, because the amount of memory you needed to access the damn thing was too high. And our computers were primitive. I mean, they were 64-bit machines, and they were very hard to use, etc. But I looked for every condition that looked like ALS and found a couple of things. And I found a doctor in Colorado Springs, Colorado, by the name of David Martz. And David had a condition very similar to mine, except he progressed much more rapidly and was on his deathbed when a doctor came up from Texas to say goodbye to David. David was a world-renowned hematologist. And the doctor came up and looked at David and said, David, I don't think you have Lou Gehrig's disease. I don't think you have that. He said, what do I have? He said, there's something called chronic Lyme's disease, which is the bite of a tick that causes a chronic neurological illness. Now, this is new. A lot of people haven't heard of it. But if I'm right, I'll start you on antibiotics, and in a week, you're going to be better. And David was just like Lazarus arising from the dead. He basically got up, was fine. Now, David started a clinic to treat people with this strange and mysterious condition. So I phoned him. I got in touch with him through the Methodist Hospital in Colorado Springs. We talked for a while, and he said, can you come down? Now, this was Thanksgiving weekend in 2003. And I said, David, I can't. He said, why? He said, well, my wife's having 50 people over for Thanksgiving on Monday, and I better be there. He said, well, aren't there any planes in Canada? Hop on one and get down here. This is more important than Thanksgiving. So I talked to my wife, and she said, you're gone again? And I said, yes, I'm gone again. I am gone for I'll be gone for the weekend. And she said, okay, where are you going? I said, I'm going to Colorado Springs, Colorado, and I just can't, I'm going to see a doctor that's going to help diagnose me, and he's hopefully going to make it much better than I am. So he basically got me to come down. I got on a plane. It was the worst plane of my life, because as you get on a little plane from Denver to Colorado Springs, it's like the drop of doom. The plane drops over 150 feet in one foul swoop, because the air off the desert is rising, and it causes these eddies that causes people just to dive. And it's terrible. It's one of the worst things in the world that could ever happen. So I got off the plane. I literally crawled off the plane, and there was David to meet me on the tarmac. Remember, this was 2003. In a small town, if you knew people then, you could drive right up on the tarmac, and there was no problem whatsoever. It was a very simple thing to do, and people did it all the time. So he basically took me home. He talked to me. He said, I think history is repeating itself. I think you have chronic Lyme's disease, and I'm going to treat you. Now, over the years, I got a little bit worse. My foot has gotten a little bit worse, and my arm's gotten a little bit worse. But for 16 years, I maintained the status as being one of the top cosmetic dermatologists in North America. I won the Consumer's Choice Award for Edmonton for 16 consecutive years. And so until I retired last year, I maintained that. Well, when you go through something like this, I guess, you got to be grateful. You got to be thankful. And you have two paths to take. One is you can become bitter, you can become angry, or you can go to a path where you find the principles of living, you find the right way. And I knew God's plan for me at that time. And I decided to find out more about this. Now, I met a young lady who was running for a Women of Distinction Award when I was a cosmetic dermatologist. I supported that for the YWCA for over 5 years. She had the same path, except her name is, let me just introduce her. Her name's Harriet Tinka. She's the co-author on my book. And she was kidnapped, stabbed, and left for dead. And she found a similar path to me, of one where we found some golden pearls where people can live a better life, not the life that they were living. Now, I think this is analogous to what's happening right now with the COVID virus. I mean, North America's died. North America's in a tailspin. North America's in the biggest funk that it's ever been. Now, we could decide to die as a result of it. We can let things happen, or you can decide to take another path and fight this and become a better business, become a better way of life. And that's what I'd like to teach everybody now, is how to use my experience at a personal and a business level really to get better and really take a better path, a higher path.
Doc, you've said a few interesting things there. Now, first of all, I'm going to call you out on something for a moment, because clearly being a doctor and being married to a doctor should have given you natural advantages, except that we've already identified that in 2003, those natural advantages weren't there. So you did the one thing that all of us do now, which is essentially go to Google to self-diagnose. And that led you down a path to Colorado. Now we can say that might be because you had access to certain resources, but let's be honest, you had to go find an answer first and convince somebody to listen to you. And they weren't listening to Dr. Barry Lycka. They were listening to some guy calling on the phone from Canada saying, I think you can help me, but I don't even know what's wrong with me. And meanwhile, another doctor talking to a doctor said, get your affairs in order and we'll make sure your funeral is splendid. That's got to have a bit of an impact. And I mean, that leads itself to here now, because all the money in the world clearly wasn't going to make a difference if you didn't find that right care and treatment, and such an elegant turning point. So what moves you from being who you were to who you're turning into now? What is that impetus, and what is this, with this life-changing challenge? Tell me a little more about these lessons that you've learned, and more importantly, what you're trying to share with other people.
You when you go through a life-changing experience, an experience when you're almost dead, you start to look around. You start to look for answers. You start to look for those golden kernels, those golden pieces around the way. You really are grateful that you've been given a second chance, a chance to live it better, a chance to do it better this time. Now you have a choice to keep those all to yourself and just be a miser and be a hermit with them, or you can share them. And the path I've chosen is to share them. And that's why I've written this dramatic book that people can learn these pearls from. And it's become a way of life, a way of speaking. I've spoke at stages from Edmonton to Phuket in Thailand. I've spoken in San Diego. I've talked at Harvard University on these experiences. And so it's really been something that's become a mission in life, something that's been great. Last year, I was at the National Publicity Summit in New York City. And I approached over 100 members of the press that all were enamored with the story. And it's in the next little while, now that the book is finally in its final stages of development, we're going to be getting that out. Unfortunately, I'm fighting with a COVID virus right now, which is allowing very little information and very little news to get out, because every day for the first 20 minutes, it's all about death and despair of how COVID is running the thing. Now, I believe that you can have a fantastic life despite the COVID virus. I think the COVID virus actually can put you on the path to a better life. Look how easy it's been to go on the internet now and communicate with people without even leaving your home. We've been able to use the means at our disposal to really be able to communicate, be able to use things in such a way. I mean, you can get up, you don't even have to comb your hair and get on the internet. It really is an amazing way of communicating. I'm so glad it's 2020 and we have all these tools at our disposal, because really we did not have these tools even 10 years ago. I mean, when did Google come into being? It wasn't that long ago, and yet it's one of the #1 companies in the world now.
Mm-hmm. So let's, you know what? Both yourself and your co-author have got an incredible story to tell anyway. And once more, that can either get you to fall right off the rails, or that can get you to make an impact, make a change. And you've brought up these golden pearls, these bits and pieces of wisdom. Clearly, if you wrote the book, you either believe it or you're hoping other people will believe you when you say it. But if you're going to write it, I'm going to guess that you're drinking your own Kool-Aid. I'm seeing things like laughter, gratitude, and enthusiasm. Why don't you fill me in?
Well, I think one of the strongest things that you can do, Mitch, is as these little trials and tribulations come, you could realize that You could laugh at things or you could cry about them. And right now, I think one of the greatest things to do is to develop that sense of humor. Humor is one of the strongest elements that we could ever have. I think it's proof that there is a benign God that teaches us how to laugh at things rather than to be destroyed at them. And you know, scientists have studied laughter. They've studied it hard. And they find it's one of the surest and simplest ways to make your mind and body come together. And did you know that in a business situation that over 91% of bosses feel a sense of humor is important for people to progress in their business? 91%. Now that's pretty awesome. Now, do you know that scientists have also studied the world's funniest joke?
Okay.
Yes, a doctor by the name of Wiseman, quite a name for a person that discovered laughter, studied it, and he asked thousands of people the funniest joke in the world. Would you like to hear the funniest joke in the world?
Yes.
Okay, Lynn, let's bring it home. There were two hunters. They were out in the woods, and one of them dropped down like he was dead. You know, his buddy didn't know what to do. So all of a sudden he gets up and he hears that, he shakes him and says, buddy, get up. His buddy doesn't move. Oh no. So what he does next is he takes out his cell phone. I mean, cell phones even work out in the woods these days, and he calls 911. And he gets on the phone all excited. Operator, please help me. My buddy's dead. The operator says, calm down, sir. Just take a deep breath. First thing you have to do is make sure he's dead. So you hear the phone drop down, you hear a click of the rifle, and all of a sudden a loud bang. He gets back on the phone. Yes, he's dead. What do I do now? Now that's black humor if I've ever heard it.
Exactly.
Black humor, but that is reputed to be the funniest joke in the world, which is great, and I love that because I've yet had a person not laugh at that joke, even though it's so bad. So it doesn't have to be a good joke to be funny. It just has to be a joke that makes everybody laugh.
All right, Doc, you're making us laugh. What about gratitude? You've mentioned gratitude a couple of times. You got to be grateful for some of this.
I think gratitude is one of those things that we don't do enough. Gratitude really helps to reset you into being in a thankful mode. And there's been studies that have done of people who have written a journal every day on being thankful and literally written 10 things that they're thankful for every day, and then judge their performance during that day, through that day, over the next whole day of progress. And you know what they found? They were more productive. They were better at doing their job, and that being thankful was one of the best things that they could ever do. So I think one of the simple things people can do on a day in and day out basis is to take a journal and write down what you're thankful for. Maybe spend 2 or 3 minutes and take that journal. And then the next day, write down 2 or 3 more. And the next day, 2 or 3 more. Because in each of those, you get better and better and better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes. Well said. Well said. So you're making us laugh and you're expressing gratitude. Obviously, enthusiasm's got to come next.
Well, let's talk about enthusiasm.
If I don't,
enthusiasm is something
if I don't
that
care
I
enough
live
to write
for.
it down, page is blank right now. I obviously don't care. That means that maybe you got to be able to motivate yourself a little bit to do it too.
That's right. I don't know how many people are in the doldrums right now, but enthusiasm is something that has to come from inside. And every day you have to be enthusiastic about your task. Every day you have to take one step forward, make baby steps, and just make it happen. But the thing that drives that is literally enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is one of the biggest, strongest forces that you can do. It's one of the best things that you can do, because enthusiasm is a very important driving force. And I'm going to tell you a little story about enthusiasm to show you why it's so important. There was Fred, who was a carpenter, He had worked for 65 years, and for 40 of those years, he worked for the same company. Now, he was tired. He was fed up. He couldn't go to work any longer. He just said, this is enough. So he went to his boss, threw his keys on the desk and said, boss, I'm quitting. I just can't take it anymore. This is just beyond me. I just don't have the spark anymore. I can't do this anymore. His boss looked at him and said, you know, Fred, you've been one of our most valuable employees over the years. You have built this construction company to what it is. It's because of your knowledge. Can you do just one more job for me before you quit? And Fred begrudgingly thought about it, and he said, you know, boss, I owe you a lot for what you've done for me. Yes, I certainly will do whatever you want. He said, okay, I want you to build me just one more house. Only you can do this because you've been my master carpenter for 40 years. Only you have the skills for that. So Fred takes on the job. He hates the job. He barely drags his ass to work every day and barely gets the job done. And at the end of the job, the house goes through an inspection and it barely passes inspection. It's so shoddily built. This was not Fred's best job by any means. So at the end of it, he goes and drops the keys on the boss's desk and says to the boss, you know, I'm done. That's it. He said, wait, Fred. We're going to have a party here. I'm going to pop the champagne. We're going to have a little get together with everybody in the office here. We've got a cake for you. We've got everything. You know, this is your party, your retirement party. And he goes to it. He says, and Fred, I've got a special gift for you. See these keys for this house? These keys are for you. This house is your house to enjoy the rest of the days of your life. Now, can you picture how different that would have been if he showed a little enthusiasm as he was doing it?
No
Can you
kidding.
picture the beautiful house he would have had and what he would have really enjoyed rather than what he had? Well, quite a difference. And that's what I'd like to share with everybody there, is enthusiasm makes that day. If you don't bring that enthusiasm with you every day to everything that you do, it's really not going to make it a great day for you. And that the house you build is not going to be the house that you want. And so I encourage you is not to be like Fred. Bring that enthusiasm every day.
So I'm gonna put this into a slightly different order right now. I'm gonna turn back for a moment. You're moving into a brand new profession. You're moving into a new life, a new existence. What does that entail? What are you doing? You've talked about speaking, you're writing, you're working with people, you want to live them a fantastic life. Well, great. Everybody's a soapbox pundit on the internet now, you know, and you can't turn over a pet rock without finding a life coach.
Well, I'll tell you,
So, Doc, what are you doing?
It's been great. I've had to learn 1,000 new skills that I didn't have. Ellie's teaching me about LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn to me has been great publicity summit. I'm in contact with them every day. I'm in contact with people I met at the National Publicity Summit that were writing their own books. I'm in touch with millions of people all over the globe. It's really an exciting time because I'm rekindling my interest. And you know, my wife turned to me the other day and said, you know, it's so great to see you enthusiastic again. And so when I go to the Cyndicate group and talk to the people there, it's great because I'm really showing them some of the skills that I've learned. And hopefully we can help them with their businesses too, because, you know, a lot of people right now, the situation is dire. Over 1/3 of businesses are not expected to make it through this recession, perhaps 1/2. You know, even with the government surpluses, even with all the handouts that are being done, the situation is bad. You know,
Yeah.
we've had more unemployed people in the last month than the 1930s. You know, it's been really, really a bad situation for a lot of people. And when are we coming out of it? Your guess is probably as good as mine. The indications are it's not going to be for a while yet. And it's going to be a long haul for people to get through this. So you have a choice. You have a choice either to adopt new skills, or you have the choice of really doing nothing and floundering in this whole situation. And I think the skill set that you develop now will be, and the people you meet now, and the things you do right now are fundamental with moving forward.
So we're talking about lessons and things to teach. If you've got something to give everybody out there right now, what's that one lesson? What's that lesson that
I
people should
think
get from
the
you?
important one lesson I want everybody to learn, it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens. I think that is the fundamental statement that everybody should really learn. I mean, let's suppose you're given some lemons. Well, you can complain about giving lemons, or you can make lemonade. I'd much prefer to have lemonade any day than having lemons. I think everybody has to be aware that the situation is there. It's the same situation for everybody. We're all in the same boat. But more businesses are made into mega businesses during a recession than at any other time.
Yeah.
Because first of all, the competition's gone. They're not surviving in all this. The key is really to getting ahead of this and doing it. Like I heard the story the other day of a coffee shop in Iowa that was forced to shut down. So what they did was they made cold brew coffee, and they had a list of customers where they took 2 liters of cold brewed coffee to everybody's house on their list. Do you know what percentage bought it? 90%. Okay. Yeah. Now, probably that's not the same as having their coffee shop open, but guess what? That cold brew is getting them through the day. While the other coffee shops are dying, they are the ones that are getting into a business, And, I've been reaching out to everybody to buy my little book. So I've got a huge list of people that have bought my book in pre-sales so that when it hits the stands, it's going to be definitely a bestseller. So what are other people doing? Well, they're saying, oh, Amazon's not printing right now. So still make the sale, you make the sale, because when you've made that sale, you can all put them through your own website, and you can give people bonuses like free shipping and things like that, which they wouldn't get through Amazon anyhow. So it's really, for me, it's been just working my business another way, working it in such a way that it's more productive.
That's going to segue for a moment to actions, but I wanted to stay on top of maximizing and making the most of the situation you're in, as opposed to lamenting it for a moment. If we go back to our last economic downturn, just to add to your thought, in 2014, from 2014 to early 2015, those first 12 months, the average business dropped about 35%, and yet a small percentage of businesses grew by about that same number. Through the 22 months that economic downturn happened, businesses lost almost 70% of their revenue, and yet the trade-off, those top 6 or 7% businesses, and not big, just about 6 or 7% of businesses grew by that trade-off of almost 70%. So that's a 140% difference in revenue, because people were able to capitalize, maximize, or took adversity and found some opportunity to develop and grow themselves. And that's a powerful lesson to take into life, because more often than not, we're probably going to get punched in the mouth instead of having a chance to live a little more idyllic.
Well, when I look back at all the history of recessions, I think the first recession I saw was back in 1974, where there was an oil crisis, but it wasn't an oil crisis like we had now. There was an embargo going on, and people had to line up to buy gas. Like if you had an odd nice plate, you could buy it on Tuesday. If you had an even, you could buy it on Monday. And the lineups for gas were around the block. Now, was there a shortage of gas? Yeah, right. We got a glut of gas right now. But that was Jimmy Carter in 1974 that had this oil embargo going on, okay? Then there was the early 1980s where there was another recession, about 81 and 82. I don't remember much of that one. I was in medical school then. I was working so hard in medical school. But again, that one passed too. And then there was another one in about 88, a bad one, a very bad one, okay? I was in Minnesota in residency then, but it was a bad one. A lot of people were really saying the sky is falling. And then the early 1990s came, and another recession hit in 91 and 92, and another one in about 98 and 99. And then there was one in 2003. And then there was one in 2007. And in each one of those, there was about a 30% decline in revenue, and everybody thought the sky was falling as well. Then there was the bond crisis in 2014 or 15, where where smart banks were selling junk bonds, and they almost caused the whole economy to crump because they were selling garbage and getting people to buy them. And it really almost caused the whole thing to go belly up.
Mm-hmm.
But again, smart maneuvering, smart things had caused it to move forward. And again, I think the same situation now. This is probably the worst recession we've had. It's akin to the 1930s. But we came through the 1930s, and everything is out of that now. I think what's going to happen is 10, 12, 14 weeks from now, there's going to be a big pent-up demand and urge for things, and people are going to want all the things they didn't have. So if you're in a business that offers those things, you're going to do very well, okay? You're going to do fantastic at that time. So, I see this as just another roadblock. I see this as a stumbling block. I see this as a big one. I see this as a hurting one. But if you stay with groups like Cyndicate, if you stay with groups like this that are teaching you the principles of how to get through this, and you rely on networking and teamwork, I think you're going to get through this one as well.
So, Doc, it sounds like we've got action steps for people next, ideas and the lessons coming from Doc. Let's come back to you. People have heard you or are going to get a chance to hear you on stage. You've spoken at Harvard, with TEDx, Blue Talks, etc. Fill me in a little bit on that. And as your career expands, what else should we expect from you?
Well, it's interesting. This year, I'm going to have 3 best-selling books. 2 that have forwards by Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul and the Success Principles. I have another one with Corey Poirier coming out on business, life, and universe. So it's a very busy year, and the 3 bestsellers are going to come out right in the Great Recession of 2020, which I don't think too many people can claim. In addition, as soon as speaking opens up, I have a platform ready and rolling out for speaking. Right now, as I say, I'm getting in touch with all these people in the press to get on their podcasts and radio shows, so that I'll be on those over the next couple of months as we gild this for the next go round, where I'll be a professional speaker on the world stage. So this next year is going to be a very busy year for me. I'm really looking forward to it. It's an exciting time. I think it's going to be an amazing year.
Fantastic. So let's come back to your book, Secrets of Living a Fantastic Life. It's a hell of a ride. It's a great read. You're using parables and stories. You're using comparisons. You're chronicling your own challenges along with your co-authors. What led you to do it?
You know what led me to do that is I think I've been a natural teacher all my life, Mitch. I love to teach. I think teaching to me is one of the most important things a person can do. I think not only should you get, but you should give as much as you can. I think giving back is a very fundamental part of living. You're a Mason, and you know that as well, that's just about as important as anything else as you do in your life, is to give, not only to get. And I think in this decade, in this part of our lives, we are very much in a situation where giving is even more important than getting. And I think we do that all the time. And I think giving is very much of something that we need to do. And I think giving is a very important part. So even in this book, I'm giving 20% of the profits of this book to go to help the inner city, so that people can't, the hardest part in this recession is people who don't even have a place they can self-isolate. They don't even have a place they can be in. I saw a terrible scene the other day that people in Vegas that are in a parking lot, and they have beds every couple of feet going on. And that's a hard thing to do. So, I think we got to go back. I think we got to help people like that. And we got to keep the bottom part of this in as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today and our audience moving forward?
Well, I've given a link to everybody in the chat. So if anybody wants to buy the book, I encourage you to buy that book. Officially, the date when I'm releasing is April 25th. That may or may not happen based on what Amazon's doing. Amazon is unfortunately a culprit in this. They've decided only to send medical supplies right now, but I suspect by the 25th it's going to be opening up a fair bit. It's interesting how they change by the day. Right now, everything changes by the minute, by the hour, and it's a very important part of things.
Last pearl of wisdom for our audience, the audience moving forward. You have to do something with your life right now other than buy the book, right? Other than buy the book, obviously, because that's the title of our podcast, of our webinar today. What is your last pearl of wisdom for people to take forward?
I think the most important thing is attitude drives action. And you need to have the right attitude to drive that action, but you also have to have the action as well. Without the action, all the attitude in the world is not going to do anything. So the two A's are very important. Attitude and action are really the driving forces for success. So A plus A equals S, probably very appropriate right now. And I think that's what we need to concentrate on.
All right. We've got the link for the website here now. We'll make sure it's going to be on the actual broadcast of the webinar later on. How else do people get a hold of you?
I'm very accessible. I have so many websites and so on. I think I'm just going to give you my cell phone because I think that's the easiest way. If I'm not on it, just leave a message. 780-907-5971. 780-907-5971. I like to be available, but I can't be on the phone 24 hours a day, but just leave a message and I promise to get back to you within 24 hours.
I can't wait to see what happens when this video's on YouTube.
I think that'll be a fun time. That'll be a fun time. The more messages, the better.
For our audience today joining us, if you've got questions or comments for Doc, let's hit them up. Otherwise, thank you very much for coming in and joining us today. Lessons for a fantastic life. The secrets to living a fantastic life.
Yes, The Secrets of Living a Fantastic Life is the title of the book. Dr. Alan Lycka, I'm using my second name for this because I just got too popular in my cosmetic surgery world. So in this life, I'm going to be going by my second name. And Harriet Tinka is the co-author of that. So please check us out. I think you'll love this book, and I think it'll teach you a lot of lessons and help you through these difficult times.
Doc, as always, it is an absolute pleasure. You keep doing what you do. We're going to watch as this grows with more interest. I know you and I will see a hell of a lot more of each other. To everybody that joined us, thank you. And
thank you for having me on.
Doc, it's been a pleasure and a privilege. And to everybody that gets to see this in the future, watch out, reach out for Doc. It is up to you to make an impact on your life and to make the changes, but you have to start with mentors, with resources, with gurus, and this book is going to be fantastic for that. Go safely, watch out for yourself and your family in the world, give Doc a read, and of course, always look to impact your life and impact those around you. It's been a pleasure today. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Barry. You're always a pleasure to listen to.
Have a great day.
Yes, thank you. You too.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Lorette.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Lorette. Have a great one.